Discover the one amazing truth that 80 years revealed. Transform your life before it's too late. Clara Evans shuffled through the dusty archives of the small-town library. The musty smell of forgotten pages wrapped around her like an old, familiar blanket. As a lifelong librarian, her world had revolved around the words of others, poets, philosophers, inventors. But today was different. She discovered a dusty box, hidden in the back corner, filled with letters and blueprints belonging to her late father, a man she had always admired but never fully understood. Its contents sent her heart racing with possibilities undone. She pulled out one letter, reading how her father believed he could revolutionize the way small towns functioned. Clara's chest tightened. His words painted visions of science and invention that had faded with the weight of family obligations. Could she really dare to breathe life into his dreams? For decades, her own aspirations lay buried beneath sacrifices made for her 3 children. Sacrifices they deemed noble, yet left her feeling like a ghost wandering through their lives. The thrill of potential pulsed through her veins, making her lighter for a moment. But reality crashed back in the form of familial expectations. She could almost hear her youngest son, Kevin's voice, questioning her with disbelief in his tone. Why would you risk our stability for something so uncertain? This tug of conflict grew, battling against her desire for independence. Did pursuing her own dreams mean tearing down the sacrifices they believed were for the family's good? Before Clara could grasp the implications of her findings, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Sam, her eldest son, strode into the room with a furrowed brow, sensing her distraction. "Mom, why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" The words stung as she recalled how unseen efforts shaped their lives, yet she had kept her own dreams locked away, buried like the blueprints before her. Doubt flickered, uninvited, kindling a fire within, a relentless urge for the life she always wanted. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With her father's letters burning in her mind, Clara faced the undeniable truth. Her children's struggles echoed through the small home they shared. Kevin's panic over college funding melded into a larger narrative of pride and perseverance. But what was she if she pursued a dream while they battled against the world? How could she step forward into the light when all they had known was the shadow of hardship? That night, as tension filled the house like an uneasy fog, Clara gathered her thoughts. She could no longer ignore her father's legacy, yet her resolve left her feeling trapped. Each conversation with her children felt like a shifting battlefield, where any step toward her own fulfillment could implode their fragile stability. Her hands shook as she considered her father's unutilized patents, while her heart ached with the weight of family loyalty. Just as Clara decided to pursue her father's name, she stepped into the living room, and chaos erupted. Kevin stood there, frustration boiling over, his earlier fears manifested in desperate cries. "Why are you choosing this over us?" The question ripped through her, leaving a raw wound in its wake. In that moment, Clara felt the world collapse, a clash of dreams and obligations. With her mind racing and breaths shallow, she realized this journey could either bridge her family or tear them apart. Uncertainty loomed large, and within it, Clara faced a suffocating truth. Could she dare to dream at the cost of everything else? Clara stood frozen in the doorway, the gathered tension within her home thick enough to cut through the air. Kevin's anger swirled around her like a storm, revealing the deep fears that had taken root in her son's heart. The weight of her unfulfilled dreams pressed down on her, yet the true paradox lay in the realization that pursuing her aspirations could shatter the very foundation she had spent years trying to build. "Kevin, It's not about choosing one over the other, she managed, her voice barely escaping her lips as uncertainty clawed at her stomach. She stepped into the living room, the walls echoing with memories of family dinners and laughter mingled with heartache. She was transparent yet multifaceted, both motherly figure and an aspiring innovator, roles that felt irreconcilable at the moment. You don't understand. It's not just a dream. It's our future. His words lashed out like a whip, and Clara winced, though she knew deep down he was speaking from a place of desperation rather than hostility. Her dreams felt like a crumbling bridge, suspended in midair, the abyss of financial insecurity awaiting her. Clara's mind began racing faster than her heartbeat. She wondered just how much of herself she had sacrificed. Surveying her life now, she recognized the bindings of guilt that had tethered her for so long, anchoring her to a role that felt increasingly foreign. What if her father's dreams were not just his, but could serve as a beacon for her children? What if pursuing his legacy could provide them a chance for empowerment rather than helplessness? Mom, this is about us being able to pay the bills, to have stability. You can't just walk away from that. Kevin's voice cracked. It was raw, filled with the weight of a reality he had barely begun to understand. How long have you felt this way? Clara asked. Her tone shifted from defensive to curious. Uncharacteristically, she leaned closer, her heart softening, ready to listen. Long enough, Kevin said, pulling away slightly, avoiding her gaze. I see how tired you are. I see everything you do for us, and I just don't want to lose you to something that might ruin everything. His vulnerability cracked through the wall she'd built around herself. For the first time, Clara contemplated that her role in their lives ran deeper than being a sacrificing mother. She could inspire them through her own courage. Yet a cautious appetite for change stirred within her. Could she really transform decades of embedded responsibility without losing them? As the whirlwind of doubts began to settle, she realized that perhaps sharing her journey could involve them, rather than exclude them. There was merit in taking this risk together, inviting her children into the exploration of her father's dreams while allowing their concerns to shape the path forward. It was not just populating their lives with security, it was about injecting it with passion and possibility. Let's talk about it, she began gently, feeling a resolve from within she hadn't known existed. I want to bring you into this. Help me figure out a way we can balance both. For the first time in years, her decisions did not hinge solely on fear, but on empowerment, aligning her history with their future. Yet, as Clara's heart swelled with a newfound determination, shadows of hesitation lingered. Could her children truly share in her dream without it overwhelming their fears? Could she trust that the storm within her could eventually lead to a brighter horizon for them all? As she felt the spark of hope flicker in her gut, uncertainty loomed like a thick mist. Just then, the ringing of her phone tore through the tension, jarring her from her thoughts. It was an unexpected number, an invitation to a community forum discussing innovative local ideas. Clara stared at the screen, a mix of fear and excitement flooding her senses. The path forward shimmered with potential, but also immense risk. Could this be the first step towards bridging her family's dreams with the weight of responsibility? She hesitated, a decision pressing down heavily in her mind. It was a pivotal moment, a chance to rewrite her narrative as both a mother and a dreamer. The choice ahead would turn the tides in ways she couldn't yet fathom, and soon she needed to decide. Without further contemplation, Clara answered the call, a resolve forming within her as she prepared to confront both the dreams of her father and the doubts of her children. The moment of truth was here, and she realized this journey would test the core of her values. Would they rise or fall together? Clara glanced at the screen as the voice on the other end introduced itself, cool yet inviting. An organizer from the local business incubator, eager to discuss her father's concept, a revolutionary idea buried under years of doubt and stagnation. As the call went on, a spark ignited in her chest. Dreams no longer felt like mere whispers they couldn't afford to pursue. They became a tangible identity intertwined with her family. Yet with each exhilarating detail she absorbed, the weight of responsibility pressed back into her mind, a steady reminder of her obligations as a mother. She noted how Kevin's apprehensive eyes reflected her own inner turmoil, his protective instincts manifesting in barriers around his heart. What if pursuing her ambitions led to instability for her children? Could she expect them to follow her into uncharted territory? Shifting back into the expression of a mother, Clara thanked the organizer, her heart racing. Once off the phone, she turned to Kevin, sensing the looming questions etched on his brow. "You heard everything I was offered?" she asked, gauging his reaction. "I mean, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's easy." Kevin's frustration returned, a thorn of concern lodging itself deeper in their interaction. Clara held her breath, wondering if he could ever grasp the dichotomy shaping her decisions. Could she transpose the clutter of dreams onto him without shrouding him in fear? "It feels like it might be the perfect opportunity for us," she insisted, her voice steady yet harmonizing the remnants of her previous doubts. "If I take this step, it doesn't mean abandoning our stability. Maybe it can create a new kind of security, one filled with passion and excitement." Kevin folded his arms, considering her words carefully. "What if it fails? What if you pour all your time and energy into this and it doesn't work? You could lose everything." Clara felt the heat rising to her cheeks, but this was not about burning bridges. It was about building them. "I know it's a risk and I'm scared too, but think about it. What if I succeed? What if we cultivate our dreams rather than pretend they don't exist?" Her heart raced as the dimensions of their realities intermingled in the room. Kevin ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. "Mom, dreams don't pay the bills." At this moment, an unsettling realization washed over Clara, prompting her to reach deeper within herself. "What if I could create a plan that works for all of us? I want your input. I don't want to shut you out." The uncertainty etched on Kevin's face wavered, the light of keen interest flickering. It was as if a door had creaked ajar in his mind, inviting a newfound dialogue. "Are you serious? You would actually consider what we think?" His reluctance morphed into curiosity, each word dripping with a timid hopefulness. "Absolutely," Clara affirmed. "You're a part of this journey. My past isn't just mine. I want to explore how our future can benefit from it." A sense of equal footing was beginning to form. The separation between mother and dreamer was beginning to dissolve. As they began brainstorming solutions, creating a mental map that both honored her father's legacy and aligned with their current needs, Clara's resolve crystallized. Their honesty was a bridge, and together they could traverse the gaps of fear with understanding and creativity. The air felt lighter, as if they were shifting toward a shared ambition. But the looming trade-off remained. Would her commitment to this new direction jeopardize the delicate balance they had established? Her heart raced at the prospect of the community forum looming ahead. It wasn't merely an opportunity for her career, but a test of faith within their newfound bond. Standing united, Clara turned to her son, excitement battling with trepidation in her heart. "So, how do we make this work?" But as hope began to spin a thread of possibility in the room, her phone vibrated again, another unexpected message altering the atmosphere, a reminder that old shadows never fully relinquish their grip. How would she navigate the ties binding family loyalty and individual aspiration as the walls of her life expanded and contracted simultaneously? Clara stared at her phone, the tightness in her chest signaling the familiar pull of doubt. The message on the screen wasn't from the organizer. It was a notification from a social media app, a photo of her father's old workshop. It stirred memories of a man who championed dreams so relentlessly that they had become entangled with her own expectations. Yet now, those dreams felt like a ticking clock, growing louder and inching closer to an indeterminate deadline. "Mom!" Kevin's voice cut through the clamor. "You okay?" She glanced back at her son, whose concern began to crack the walls she had hastily erected around herself. "Yeah, just thinking about things," she replied, but the weight of old shadows crept back. The specter of failure loomed, and with it the potential to drag Kevin into a world of uncertainty she had sparred with for far too long. "No more thinking. Let's take action," Kevin urged, with newfound resolve, surprising her. "You talked about a plan that involved us. So let's really develop it together." "You're right." Clara marveled at her son's willingness to engage, which sparked a fresh intensity within her. It felt almost revolutionary. Collaboration replaced hesitation. She grabbed a notebook and pen, and they began sketching ideas, brainstorming prospective markets, target audiences, and ways to shape the business without sacrificing their needs. Hours slipped by as ideas volleyed back and forth, and each suggestion seemed to reinforce Clara's determination. She realized the small victories. Kevin's laughter broke through the tension when she proposed a quirky promotional campaign based on her father's old antics. Somehow, the simple act of sharing the load, of intertwining their risks and dreams, transformed her fears into something lighter. As they fleshed out the plans, the reality of her father's legacy felt less like a burden and more like a foundation upon which to build. Yet, an unfiltered worry loomed large. She was still painfully aware they had no guarantee of success, and that gnawing fear was a reminder to tread carefully through the uncertainty. Still, in this moment, Clara vowed to confront the potential threats ahead rather than succumb to them. "How are we going to fund this? What about the logistics? We need a strategy, something concrete," she said, feeling herself slip into the zone of clarity she craved. "Why don't we reach out to the incubator? They might also have resources we can tap into," Kevin suggested, flipping the dynamic, encouraging her to lean into community instead of standing apart. The concept resonated within her, a potential pathway leading deeper into uncharted waters, and it ignited a fervor. She could harness her passion and intellect, crafting a business that would not only honor her father's character, but also secure their family's future. They crafted emails to potential advisors within the organization, responding eagerly to challenges, each step feeling like a brick laid towards something monumental. But just as anticipation began to build, her phone buzzed again, this time with a name that sent ripples of anxiety through the room: Greg. His text read simply, "We need to talk." Clara's heart raced, considering the implications. Would he understand her new path? Or would this conversation lead to the edge of turmoil, threatening everything she had started to cultivate? "Mom?" Kevin's voice broke her reverie, concern lacing his features. "What's wrong?" The melding of excitement and fear darkened Clara's thoughts. She was about to step into one of the most challenging conversations of her life. Torn between past loyalties and her burgeoning dreams, she realized that this moment was pivotal. What would she reveal to Greg? Could she hold her poise amidst the chaos that had often dictated her decisions? The very shadows she thought she could escape were weaving back into the fabric of her present. Clara took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "Time to confront those shadows," she whispered to herself. The dilemma ahead would either propel her forward or knock her down. Either way, it was a battle she couldn't ignore, and with that, she prepared to send a reply, the tension whispering promises of a confrontation that could alter the course of everything she was beginning to reclaim. Clara paused before her phone, the screen's glow reflecting the whirlwind of thoughts swirling in her mind. Greg's invitation to talk loomed large, a potential fissure in the delicate foundation she was trying to rebuild. What could he possibly want to discuss? Would it be about the past, or would he recognize the new direction she was pursuing? It wasn't just her path that hung in the balance. It was Kevin's future, too. She felt a jolt of resolve surge within her. Perhaps this was an opportunity. Confronting Greg might clarify not only her own intentions, but also illuminate whether he could remain part of this new chapter. She took a moment to breathe, channeling her anxiety into something more constructive. Clara sent him a reply, simple yet assertive. "Let's meet. When and where?" While waiting for a response, she turned to Kevin, who was still flipping through their brainstorming notes, oblivious to the tremors of anxiety rippling through her. The ease with which they had worked together earlier surprised her. It became clear that bringing Kevin into this process wasn't just a method to divide the workload. It was a way to evolve into a partnership, a renewal of trust and loyalty that thrived on shared dreams. "Mom, what's the next step here?" asked Kevin, looking up from the notes, eager for the next move. Clara's expression softened at his enthusiasm. "I think we reach out to the incubator and pitch our ideas. This could really propel us forward." She had never realized how invigorating it was to be accountable to someone. The air surrounding her felt lighter. "Right, I'll work on the presentation," Kevin said, an electric glee in his voice. "Let's make it captivating. Maybe include some multimedia?" "Yes. Let's showcase how our brand connects to the stories from the workshop, your granddad's legacy," she responded, a surge of creativity igniting her own passion. Just as they began organizing their thoughts for the incubator, the phone chimed again. "He said tomorrow at the cafe on Maple," Clara informed Kevin, her heart beginning to race. "Are you sure you want to go?" he asked cautiously. "Yes." Clara's voice was firm, steeling herself against the flood of doubts that encroached as each minute ticked by. "No matter what he says, I owe it to myself to stand my ground." As they went through the proposals, Clara realized the vital role that boundaries played. It dawned on her that her past with Greg had shaped her too much. She needed to define her identity independent of him. Their previous conversations had often veered into obligations, one family member to another. But this was about boundaries and developing her own voice. They continued to brainstorm, and with each idea they formulated, Clara's pulse quickened with anticipation and clarity. She was crafting not just a business plan, but a life map, one that championed not just her dreams, but Kevin's. Still, the thought of tomorrow's conversation lingered ominously beneath the surface. Would Greg accept her transformation? Or would he pull her back into the inertia of the past? With newfound energy, Kevin and Clara spent the evening fine-tuning their pitch, practicing their gestures, and honing their words. Each draft outlining possibilities broader than the horizon. Here, in this moment of focused creation, Clara unearthed a brave understanding of herself. She was ready to claim her narrative and articulate her boundaries, even if it meant disappointing others. And as they finally wrapped up for the night, the undercurrent of fear and anticipation was palpable. Tomorrow held the potential for change, but the outcome was uncertain. What if Greg fought back? The question lay heavily, a reminder that she was still standing on the edge of two worlds. Tomorrow would be the first step into a broader horizon. It was time to face the shadows head-on, with fortified intent, clear purpose, and an unwavering belief in herself. After all, she had much to gain from this moment. But would the confrontation offer clarity, or would it push her back into uncertainty? The thoughts echoed within her as she leaned back in her chair, preparing for the challenge ahead. Clara paced her apartment that morning, practicing the dialogue in her head as if she were an actress preparing for a pivotal scene. The air was charged with both excitement and anxiety, the mixture making it hard to focus. She checked her reflection in the hallway mirror, running a hand over her hair to tame the strands that refused to cooperate. Today was not just about meeting Greg. It was a declaration of her renewed self. Kevin was already dressed, his enthusiasm bubbling over as he double-checked the pitch materials. "You look ready, Mom. You've got this," he said, beaming with confidence. His faith in her became a protective shield, making her feel less vulnerable. Clara marveled at how the roles had shifted. Her son's belief in their joint venture forged a bond deeper than she had anticipated. "Thanks, Kev. I'm just thinking about how this meeting might play out," she admitted, remarking on how the tables had turned. It was no longer about her fitting into someone else's narrative. Now she was questioning how Greg could fit into hers. They arrived at the cafe early, the outside temperatures chilling as Clara mentally steeled herself. She glanced around, the quaint decor, and gentle murmurs of conversation attempting to soothe her fraying nerves. Yet, the moment she spotted Greg walking toward her, All the ambience faded away, leaving only the weight of their history looming large. "Clara," he greeted, noting the professionalism in her demeanor. A flicker of surprise crossed his expression, but it quickly masked itself behind a veneer of casualness. "Greg," she replied, a little too briskly, yet determined to maintain her assertiveness. "Thanks for meeting with me." They sat down, the table between them a symbolic barrier. The conversation started cautiously, familiar pleasantries filling the air, but Clara sensed it was just the calm before the storm. "Bruce and I were talking about the workshop. I think we could use your input and maybe it's time we came together as a family again," he said, attempting to navigate the conversation with a diplomacy she hadn't expected. "Greg," she interjected, catching him off guard, "I want to discuss something different today. I'm at a point where I need boundaries. My life is no longer about just family obligations." The tension sharpened as her words landed heavily between them. Greg's expression shifted, irritation flared, followed by an unsettling calm. "Is this about Kevin? You know he should have a stable family. We owe it to him." Clara felt the old anger rise. The weight of their past clung to them both, but she was determined to not be pulled back into that realm. "This isn't just about stability. I want Kevin to see that life can be different. I'm creating a new legacy, not one that revolves around your expectations." The silence that followed was punctuated by unspoken realizations. Greg seemed taken aback, grappling with the realization that Clara had evolved, transformed in ways he had never anticipated. "Clara, I didn't realize you felt this strongly. I thought we could work together like old times," he said, his tone denoting a desperate hope for reconciliation. "Old times are precisely what I'm trying to move beyond. My past doesn't bind me anymore, and it certainly shouldn't bind Kevin," she proclaimed, her voice rising with conviction. The steady rhythm of her heartbeat began to echo through her mind, a mounting crescendo of empowerment. As their conversation developed, Clara discovered that her strength did not waver despite Greg's attempts to retreat into their shared history. It was as if with each exchange, walls dismantled and new foundations began to form. "And if you can't accept this?" Greg asked, genuine uncertainty knitting his brow. "Then you will need to understand that you don't control my choices," Clara responded, a sense of finality grounding her words. She knew she was stepping into uncharted territory, but one thing remained clear. She was willing to chase the unknown for both herself and Kevin. As she walked out of the cafe, her heart no longer raced with anxiety, but pulsed with exhilaration. Clara's face broke into a smile. The meeting did not define who she was anymore. Instead, she was steadily reclaiming that identity, piece by piece, moment by moment. Yet she couldn't deny the lingering doubt about how Greg would react moving forward. Today had been just one encounter, but it would ripple into many more moments that required reframing her relationship with family. It was time to turn back to Kevin and their venture. But an unsettling question remained. Would Greg respect this new chapter, or would he continue to challenge her resolve? Clara's return to the apartment felt like stepping into both a sanctuary and a battleground. Kevin was absorbed in sketching ideas for their project, an assortment of colorful markers strewn about the table. She could feel his energy radiating throughout the space, a stark contrast to the heaviness she had felt during her meeting with Greg. Here, in their little world, the uncertainty about her past was replaced with the promise of a brighter future. "Mom, look at this!" he exclaimed, bringing her attention to a bold design featuring a dynamic color palette. "What do you think about incorporating these colors into our branding?" Clara's heart swelled. "That's brilliant, Kev. It perfectly captures the energy we want to convey." It was moments like these that reminded her what she was fighting for. Not just a career or a legacy, but a life where creativity flourished and dreams could take flight. Yet the weight of her earlier confrontation with Greg loomed in the back of her mind, creating a tension that was hard to ignore. "Everything okay?" Kevin asked, sensing her distraction. "Yeah, just thinking about the meeting," she replied, trying to shake off the remnants of doubt clinging to her thoughts. Did it go well? I mean, are we still moving forward? His innocence struck her. She had spent years navigating the complexities of adult emotions. The last thing she wanted was for Kevin to bear the burden of her choices. Absolutely, she said, forcing confidence into her voice. We're moving forward. It's just, there are challenges. But challenges can be good for growth, right? Kevin nodded, seemingly satisfied. But as Clara sat down with her laptop to review their market research, the strains of her recent confrontation with Greg echoed in her thoughts. His face, a mask of confusion and resentment, lingered. She had realized she no longer needed his validation, yet the remnants of doubt whispered persistently. Late into the evening, her resolve began to fade. Would Greg exert pressure again? Would he treat her newfound independence as a threat? The uncertainty gnawed at her, taunting her with questions about her right to pursue happiness without his approval. Determined not to let fear undermine her progress, Clara began drafting a new business proposal, pouring her heart into the vision she shared with Kevin. With each keystroke, the storm within her settled. She'd spent too long waiting for someone else's permission. This was her moment, no one else's, no one. Mom, I can help with the marketing strategy, Kevin chimed in, breaking through her focus and reigniting a sense of partnership. It was a reminder that she was not alone in this journey. They were crafting something together, not just a business, but a shared future. As they collaborated, ideas flowed, fostering an energy that surged between them. Each suggestion from Kevin sparked a flash of inspiration in Clara. She marveled at his creative instincts, recalling how his unwavering belief in their venture had grounded her during moments of self-doubt. Later that night, as she tucked Kevin into bed, she couldn't shake the heavy fog of worry that clung to her. Would Greg undermine their progress? Could his desire for a cohesive family structure disrupt everything they were building? That night, she found herself unable to sleep. The ticking clock, a symbolic reminder of her angst-laden thoughts. A decision crystallized in the depths of her contemplation. She needed clarity, a definitive conversation with Greg. No more passive avoidance. It was time to assert her chosen path, regardless of the fallout. But as the sun rose, bringing the promise of a new day, an unexpected message dinged on her phone, a text from Greg that sent her heart racing. We need to talk more about the workshop and your role. When are you available? In that moment, Clara felt the familiar anxiety return, the urgency of an impending confrontation pulsing through her veins. She had anticipated his reaction, but the prospect of another discussion about her boundaries left her grappling with an array of emotions. What was she willing to risk to secure her newfound autonomy? As she stared at the screen, her determination solidified. The moment had arrived to confront the unresolved tension. And how would she present her case without compromising her boundaries? With breaths deepening, Clara prepared herself for a battle of wills, knowing full well that the stakes were higher than ever. The outcome could either fortify her new identity or force her back into old narratives. In her heart, she believed she was ready for whatever came next. But was she truly? As she hit reply, the words forming in her mind were more than a response. They were a declaration of self-worth and an invitation to embrace uncertainty. Would Greg respect her choices, or would he continue to challenge her resolve? Clara stared at her phone, her heartbeat thrumming in her ears as she waited for Greg's response. Each second stretched into eternity, her mind racing with potential outcomes, scenarios where she stood firm, and others where she crumbled into old patterns. She had envisioned this moment as a defining line, though the weight of what lay ahead loomed heavily. After what felt like an eternity, Greg's reply pinged on her phone. How about tomorrow at noon? My office? The offer felt laden with implications, sending butterflies of fear twisting in her stomach. His office wasn't just a location. It was a symbol of the power dynamics that had ensnared her for years. Yet, this meeting could also be the portal to change, if she navigated it carefully. As the hours passed, Clara focused on tasks that seemed mundane but were infused with new significance. She organized sketches, fine-tuned the business proposal, and collaborated with Kevin on the recent branding ideas. Each completed task fortified her resolve. She was building something real, a future crafted with love and resilience. But even as she engaged with Kevin, feelings of trepidation lingered. Was she truly prepared to confront Greg? Could she balance assertiveness with the need to maintain some semblance of familial harmony? A prominent voice inside her shouted for clarity, while another warned against loss, a familiar dichotomy she had wrestled with for years. Later that evening, Clara and Kevin sat at the dining table, laptops and notes spread around them. The air crackled with creativity. "We should use social media to create buzz," Kevin suggested, sketching ideas that radiated excitement. Clara felt invigorated. "Yes, and we can engage with our audience by sharing behind-the-scenes content," she added, jolting with inspiration. This was partnership. This was progress. Yet, somewhere within her, the flux of emotions continued to swirl. As night crept in, the prospect of tomorrow's confrontation overshadowed the evening's triumphs. Would she maintain her firm stance in the face of Greg's disapproval? Sleep eluded her, thoughts spiraling into a restless abyss. Her mind replayed snippets of past arguments with Greg, a familiar dance of frustration and hurt. But she was determined that tomorrow would mark a different narrative. She would not return to being the Clara who sought approval and validation. The morning brought a mix of anticipation and dread. She dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that blended professionalism with a hint of her personality, a subtle declaration that she was stepping into the conversation as an equal, not a subordinate. Each item of clothing felt like armor, preparing her for battle. As noon approached, Clara felt her heart racing. On the way to Greg's office, she practiced key phrases in her mind, mantras of self-worth flowing like a protective shield. "I deserve to chase my dreams," she repeated silently to herself. Yet doubt crept in as well. Would he see her strength or read it as defiance? Entering Greg's office, Clara's confidence wavered for a moment. The space was decorated with accolades and a sense of authority that had once intimidated her. Greg rose to greet her with a slightly concerned look, and for a moment she questioned whether this meeting would spiral into another battle of wills. Or could it possibly lead to an understanding? They sat down, the air thick with tension as she sensed his unease. She had steeled herself for confrontation, yet Greg's demeanor seemed more reflective than combative. "Clara, I'm glad we're talking," he began, but the rest of his sentence drowned in her racing thoughts. This was about more than just business. It was her life, her choices, her future. Would she seize this moment? Would she confront him head-on about her autonomy? Or would she retreat into familiar habits of negotiation and compromise? She opened her mouth, ready to articulate her needs, but then she hesitated, the familiar tug-of-war between two versions of herself pulling her in opposing directions. The stakes had never been higher, and everything hinged on how she would respond. What would she risk revealing about her newfound independence? The answer hung heavily in the air between them, a glimmer of possibility intertwined with the uncertainty of his response. Clara felt her heartbeat synchronize with the momentum of the moment, ground zero for an inflection point. Would this conversation empower her, or would it push her into the shadows once more? The answer, she soon realized, would depend not on Greg, but on her ability to claim her truth with courage. As she prepared to voice her thoughts, hope and fear intertwined, and the outcome of their confrontation loomed ominously just ahead. What declaration would define this new chapter of her life, and how would Greg react? Clara swallowed hard, her throat dry, as the weight of the moment settled around her like a heavy fog. Greg's gaze held hers, but she could sense the latent skepticism behind it. This wasn't just about business. It was a crossroads where her convictions clashed with years of ingrained patterns. "Clara," he prompted gently, urging her to speak, but his tone felt controlling, colliding with her determination to be seen as an equal. She inhaled deeply, the air tinged with the scent of rich leather and polished wood, symbols of power and provenance. It made her question the validity of her desire to redefine their relationship. "Greg," she began, her voice trembling slightly, but gaining strength as she continued. "I appreciate your willingness to meet, but I can't ignore the fact that the direction our project has been taking feels compromised by influences that don't reflect my vision." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly masked by the practiced demeanor of an experienced executive. Clara's pulse quickened at the realization that she was asserting herself, and a surge of adrenaline coursed through her. "Tell me more," he said, leaning forward, interest piqued. This was an opening. She felt the rush of empowerment and seized it, refusing to allow past reverberations of doubt to suffocate her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she responded, "and I believe we need to align our goals more closely. Our brand, my brand, should resonate with authenticity, embracing the vision I've crafted rather than conforming to traditional expectations." The room was silent for a moment, the unvarnished truth hanging between them. Clara could feel the momentum shift. Greg's eyes narrowed slightly, a hint that he was recalibrating his approach, which brought a new layer of anxiety. Would he dismiss her efforts? "You have to understand that running a successful business often requires compromise," he said, his voice steady, yet Clara sensed the faint undercurrent of defensiveness. "Embracing authenticity isn't a compromise, it's a necessity," Clara countered, her heart racing with growing confidence. Each word felt like an affirmation, a muscle memory developing in real time. "Look, I've always believed that you have talent. Then let me directly apply that talent," she interjected. The interruption surprised even her, but the moment required decisiveness. Greg leaned back, a mixture of admiration and irritation clouding his expression. "You're challenging the framework we've built." "Because the framework doesn't work for me anymore," she shot back, feeling the heat rise inside her. "I refuse to navigate a world that limits my creativity and passion." The air between them crackled, a battleground of wills. Clara's commitment to her own voice began shifting the narrative. Though she sensed his resistance, an inexplicable vulnerability crept in. This was no longer just about her business, it was about redefining herself within this familial dynamic. "What are you proposing, then?" Greg's tone softened slightly, curiosity mingling with skepticism. She hesitated, but quickly gathered her thoughts. "I want to consolidate the branding direction. I need autonomy in how we represent our core values and engage with our audience. It's what I believe. My belief is part of this new path." Silence enveloped them. The flicker of a shared history intertwined with their initial professional bond echoed uncomfortably, raising the stakes of Clara's request. Greg shifted in his seat, processing. "You know this isn't easy for me." "Neither is it easy for me, Greg," Clara replied evenly, grounding herself in the truth that set her apart. "But growth demands courageous conversations." He studied her, a blend of respect and concession unfolding in his eyes. "I see you're serious about this," he finally said. "Absolutely," she affirmed, a subtle smile pulling at her lips. Yet, even as an unfamiliar sensation of empowerment washed over her, a gnawing feeling of dread bubbled deep inside. What if Greg's acceptance morphed into passive resistance? What kind of negotiation lay ahead? As the tension began to shift, Clara realized the next step was equally critical. She had taken a step towards resilience today, but would she be prepared to navigate the complexities that could arise from Greg's newfound understanding? She hadn't just risen against Greg, she had risen for herself. With every breathing moment, she was reshaping the narrative of her life. However, questions lingered. If Greg agreed to her delegation terms, how would their relationship evolve from here? Would it truly mean the collaborative environment she craved, or would cracks still mar their partnership? With a determined heart, Clara realized this battle was just one act in a larger play. The curtain of her journey was only arising, and the potential consequences of her declaration loomed just beyond the horizon. As Greg opened his mouth to respond, Clara knew the real change was only beginning. Would this meeting truly mark a turning point, or would she find herself grappling with unforeseen challenges ahead? Clara Evans emerged from Greg's office, a sense of triumph mingled with uncertainty coursing through her veins. She had articulated her vision with unprecedented clarity, standing firm against the protective beta male dominance that had defined their previous interactions. The familiar tug of doubt and fear had begun to release its grip, replaced by a budding confidence that was both exhilarating and terrifying. As she walked toward her car, the brisk air felt liberating against her skin. Today was a significant turning point. She had not just advocated for herself, but also carved a place for her dreams. Driving home, visions of potential flooded her mind. Plans intertwined with her father's legacy, the brand lifting off into the world like a soaring bird finally unchained from a cage. When Clara stepped into the apartment, the sounds of Kevin's laughter enveloped her. He was animatedly discussing ideas with a friend over the phone, punctuating the air with enthusiasm that instantly brought light to the room. Seeing him buoyant like this grounded her, reminding her of the importance of their journey, a journey each of them had the right to envision together. "Mom, you're back!" Kevin exclaimed, rushing towards her with unfiltered excitement. "How did it go?" Clara paused, taking a deep breath. "It went well. Really well, and I shared a lot about the direction I want to take with the project." The words slipped out easier than she expected, as if articulating them aloud gave them life. "That's awesome." His face lit up, a beacon of acknowledgement that reinforced her efforts. "I knew you could do it. Let's keep this momentum going. We need to flesh out our presentation for the incubator," she said, her heart swelling. "And I want your input on something crucial. How do we ensure our brand reflects our values and my vision for the workshop?" Kevin's gaze brightened with purpose, and they dove back into their collaborative effort, an electric synergy unfolding. Ideas bounced off the walls as they infused their passions into a shared vision, a tapestry woven from Clara's rich legacy and Kevin's fresh perspectives. Weeks passed, each day unveiling a series of small victories. Clara reveled in newfound opportunities, networking events, feedback loops, and the eventual presentation to the incubator, which far surpassed her wildest expectations. It wasn't just about the success of launching the venture. It was about reclaiming her identity and allowing her aspirations to flourish without the tethers of guilt. The day finally came when they presented to the incubator, a whirlwind of energy, laughter, and impromptu brainstorming. Clara stood tall at the head of the table beside Kevin, both a mother and a businesswoman forged in the same fires of ambition. They wove their narrative with authenticity, integrating the dreams of the past while embracing the possibilities of the future. "To honor the legacy of my father, we need to pivot away from conformity and embrace authenticity," Clara declared, her voice powerful and steady. In that moment, the room filled with murmurs of intrigue, and she felt an unshakable confidence washing over her. The reception was affirming. They reacted positively to the passion behind their proposal. Clara could feel the weight of years traded for a lighter feeling as her heart swelled with pride, not just for herself, but for the future they were crafting together. As success materialized, Greg approached her one more time, genuine applause nestled in an unexpected layer of respect. "Clara, you've truly taken the reins. I see and respect the direction you've carved for this venture," he admitted, his words carrying sincerity that both surprised and eased her worries. In truth, Clara had achieved far more than a business opportunity. She had accomplished a reclamation of self-esteem, a revitalization of familial bonds intertwined with her aspirations. Each step had fortified her confidence, marking a growth that spanned both personal and professional realms. Celebrations followed, peppered with laughter, camaraderie, and pride in their accomplishment. In her heart of hearts, Clara finally understood. she had not just transformed her path of existence, but had begun to illuminate possibility within her family as well. Just as they prepared to leave the restaurant, Kevin raised a toast, his youthful exuberance unbound. To dreams, and to our future. Cheers, everyone echoed, laughter twinkling like starlight around them. Clara declared, let dreams not only be our legacy, but the fabric of our everyday lives. With that, the clarity of purpose echoed within her, no longer a ghost wandering through her family's lives. She stood resolutely as Clara Evans, a mother, a dreamer, and a burgeoning entrepreneur. The shadows of uncertainty had transformed into a canvas of potential, forever shifting her narrative. As the last light faded from the horizon, Clara turned to Kevin, recognition of growth illuminating her face. This is just the beginning, isn't it? Absolutely, he replied with excitement. And in that moment, in the warmth of family and future, Clara embraced the fullness of her life, a life finally defined by her own dreams, fully realized. The stage was set, the curtain was rising on her new chapter. In this way, she fully embraced the journey ahead. And now is your moment to seize a new chapter. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Clara's journey and her continuous transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of these actions.